Subscribe for more.
I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to hire someone to follow my spouse. I always imagined that my marriage would be built on trust, respect, and transparency. But something had shifted over the past year, subtle at first, almost imperceptible. Small comments, lingering glances at men in public, texts that made me uneasy. I'm Nathan, 38, from Boston, and I thought I knew my wife, Charlotte. We've been married for 12 years, or at least I thought we had been living in the same marriage. The first 8 years were everything I had hoped for. She was vibrant, witty, and had this energy that could light up a room. I was steady, reliable, a software engineer with a calm life and quiet evenings. Our connection felt effortless. Late-night conversations, weekend trips to the New England coast, and countless evenings watching films together. Life was simple, predictable, comforting. Then things started to change. At first, it was nothing I could put a finger on. Charlotte began staying later at work, sometimes saying she was meeting clients, other times saying she had errands. I told myself not to worry, that everyone goes through phases. But the text messages, short and dismissive, the way she laughed just a little too long at messages from people I didn't know, it created a pit in my stomach I couldn't ignore. I tried to talk about it casually, asking, "Is everything okay at work?" Or, "Did you have a good day?" She'd smile, nod, and shift the conversation, brushing past the unease I felt. Every little avoidance chipped at me. I wasn't paranoid. I reasoned, just observant. I had invested too much, too long, to ignore subtle signs of disrespect or distance. One evening, after another week where she seemed distant and distracted, I brought it up. I said gently, "Charlotte, I've noticed you've been distant lately. Is there something you want to talk about?" She looked at me for a moment, a flicker of irritation in her eyes, and said, "Nathan, I'm tired. Can we not do this right now?" That was it. No explanation, no acknowledgement of the growing tension between us. Just exhaustion and the subtle implication that I was overreacting. That night, I lay awake on our bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to reconcile the person I knew with the behavior I was seeing. I didn't act immediately. I wanted to believe and trust in the vows we had taken. But my gut told me something wasn't right. I started noticing patterns, late dinners, sudden solo errands, unusual texts on her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I tried talking to friends, framing it as seeking advice rather than admitting my suspicion. One of them, a longtime friend named Derek, suggested, gently, almost cautiously, that perhaps I consider following the trail myself. Not as an act of paranoia, but to confirm whether my instincts were accurate. I resisted the idea for a while, telling myself it was extreme, but the unease grew too heavy to carry alone. One Friday, after another cryptic excuse about meeting a colleague for drinks, I made the call. I asked Derek to accompany me, not as a detective, just someone to observe discreetly. I wanted to know the truth. I needed to see it with my own eyes, not imagine it, not dwell in the uncertainty any longer. Saturday evening, we followed Charlotte, keeping a careful distance. We parked across the street from a small bistro she claimed she was meeting a client at. Inside, through the window, the scene unfolded in slow motion, like a reality I had only feared. Charlotte was not meeting a colleague. She was laughing, leaning in close to a man I didn't recognize, touching his arm lightly, whispering something that made him smile. The intimacy was subtle, a brush of a hand, a lingering gaze, a familiarity that spoke of more than casual friendship. I felt a wave of disbelief, then an undeniable surge of anger, followed immediately by the sharp, hollow ache of betrayal. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. Derek didn't say a word. Neither of us did. We simply watched, the truth unfolding in front of us, undeniable and cruel. That night, I confronted her at home. I kept my voice steady, controlled, masking the storm that threatened to rise within me. "Charlotte, I saw you tonight. Who was that man?" She looked startled, then defensive, then amused, as if she had been caught in a minor inconvenience rather than a breach of trust. "Nathan, it's not what you think," she said lightly. I paused, taking in her words, her tone, her eyes. Not regret, not guilt, just amusement tinged with irritation. I realized then that this wasn't about misunderstanding. It was about disregard, and worse, about the thrill of secrecy. I didn't yell, I didn't demand explanations. I simply said, "I need to think." The next week passed in a blur. Every interaction felt like walking on ice, fragile and dangerous. I observed her behavior, noting patterns, watching how she interacted with colleagues, friends, anyone who sparked my suspicion. My trust had fractured completely. Every small act of normalcy she displayed now carried undercurrents of deceit. I had known this marriage through routine and comfort, but now, each smile and casual touch seemed like a calculated performance. I wanted to walk away, to end it before the damage went deeper, before the betrayal festered further. But leaving was complicated. Our lives were entwined, finances merged in certain aspects, and the history we shared weighed heavily. I had to make a plan, a way to preserve my dignity while deciding the fate of the relationship. I consulted with a lawyer friend discreetly, laying out facts without emotion, just events. I wanted advice on how to protect myself if things escalated legally, financially, or socially. At the same time, I knew that confrontation without strategy would lead to chaos, and chaos wasn't something I could afford. I started documenting everything: dates, times, interactions, observations. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was seeking clarity. Evidence, I told myself, would give me the leverage to make a decision calmly, without being manipulated by guilt, anger, or fear. One evening, Charlotte tried to dismiss my observation again, laughing it off with a flippant, "Nathan, you're imagining things. You're overthinking." But this time, I didn't argue. I didn't react. I just said, "I've seen enough. I need space." I packed a small bag, left the house quietly, and went to Derek's place. That night, I slept alone, not in despair, but in the strange peace that comes from taking control of a situation that has been out of control for too long. For the first time in weeks, my thoughts were my own. My mind wasn't racing to interpret texts or gestures. It was clear, sharp, and focused. Over the following days, I made decisions that would preserve my dignity and my well-being. I limited my interactions with Charlotte, insisted on transparency in any shared responsibilities, and began rebuilding routines that centered on me, not on the chaos she seemed intent on creating. I didn't seek to punish her, and I didn't indulge in fantasies of revenge. I simply observed, documented, and chose calm over confrontation. Every action was deliberate, calculated to maintain my integrity while navigating a relationship that had become unsafe emotionally. The truth was brutal, but clarity is a powerful thing. I realized that this marriage, at least in the form I had known it, was over. Not with shouting, not with rage, not with drama, but with quiet acknowledgement of reality. Charlotte's choices were hers, and mine were mine. I could choose bitterness, I could choose submission, or I could choose clarity and self-respect. I chose the latter. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be conversations, financial negotiations, perhaps heartbreak, but for the first time in months, I felt in control. Not of her, not of the betrayal, but of myself. And that, I realized, was the only thing that truly mattered. The next morning, I went for a long walk through the city streets, the crisp autumn air clearing the fog that had settled over my mind. I didn't feel triumphant, and I didn't feel free yet, but I felt alive. The knowledge of what had been done, what had been hidden, and what had been ignored gave me perspective. And perspective, I realized, was more valuable than anger, more valuable than retribution. I had witnessed the truth. I had acknowledged it. And now, finally, I could decide how to move forward, not as a man chasing what he thought should have been, but as a man facing what truly was.